Well, welcome to this lecture, Behavior-Driven Web3 Game Design. And this is a study of the Voxelverse main character smart contract that's been, just finished off. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to go over some of the design decisions with the smart contract. So there is a concept called like behavioral, game design or behavioral game mechanics. And we took a different take on that inside of the Voxelverse and made this almost like a because there's like a financial like mechanism to Web3 games. So when you are designing your characters, you are, integrating these, mechanisms into the game loop, which is also tied to the economic loop, which we've discussed in previous lectures. So the psychology behind the use it or lose it mechanic that we defined is something called loss aversion. So expire tokens, drive logins. So take it into account that every day your character gains, 10 tokens, and these 10 tokens allow the character to do various things within inside the game world. It will force your users to basically to check in and at least get those tokens, right? Some of them will be like, well, you know what, since I'm already in, I'll play for 10, 15 minutes. But there might be some people who just farm, and that's a part of the Web3 conundrum that we have. But it does drive a consistent login from your users, and it's a good design pattern to use. We also have something called FOMO or fear of missing out, and the countdown timer spark urgency. So once they know that they only have a specific time, you can take this in from like, sales. So you have a course and you're going to sell a course, and, it's always the last minute. In 13 hours, you're going to get this deal, right? It drives that urgency like, well, hey, man, if I don't make this decision to, buy this course in, X amount of days, I'm gonna have to pay like three times the amount, right? But I digress. So habit formation. So having your users log in daily is going to form habits in your players, and perceive scarcity of rewards feel precious, right? Especially in the case of the Voxelverse main character smart contract. If you go past the actual claim time for that 24-hour period, it doesn't accrue. Like if you don't like log in every 24 hours, then you're losing claims, right? So most people are not going to want to have that when they can just simply log in, do a couple actions, claim their reward for the day, and be done with it. So how do we go about implementing this psychology? Well, so loss aversion. We can take it that we have these aspiring tokens, which drives the logins. We've kind of already gone over this. FOMO, we have a countdown timer, immediate claims, forming habits, which we have strict resets, and we are creating like a routine. And then we have this perceived scarcity component with this non-cumulative claims, which are value because they are value, especially if you take into account the voxelverse, where the tokens that you use allow you to update your axe or your pickaxe, or any of the other items, buying seeds and other wood. All these things are based on the token. So you want to be able to log in because not only does it help your character stay alive because you need to eat and you need to do all these different sorts of things, but there's also value because when you're building out your crops and you're selling your items, then you have this kind of loop where you're using logging in to gain the assets to keep you alive and to also help you earn. So there's a game loop and an economic loop that are tied into this. So we have the behavior-driven mechanics here. We have the A, R, U, and C. We're going to go over what each of these variables are. Then you have your the E value here for your daily emission, which is your claim reward. And then you have the annual, emission rate, or like the percentage of tokens that will come into, foray or into the game. So there is some kind of like, inflation till you get to a peak of the max amount of tokens that will ever be inside the game. And this is defined as E event. So A here is defined as the active players. So it's the number of active players, say that as an example, we have 100,000. R is defined as the daily reward rate, and the average tokens are earned per player per day. So you can say that, by logging in and doing the claim for this particular character, it's 2 tokens a day that they can get. U is the unclaimed rate. So this is a percentage of players who don't log in, right? The 24-hour period goes through, and for whatever reason they missed the day and they didn't get their claim. And then we have the complement of U, where the percentage of the reward rate, rewards that are claimed, and then we have this value here. And it'd probably be good to have like another video that's defined just like on the mathematics, the equations that are first designed before the code is actually written. But that might be something that is just like another course altogether. So we have an example of this collaboration. So say S is 1 billion tokens. We have A, which is 100,000 players. We have U, which is 30% of the unclaimed. We have Phi for the 5% of the annual inflation. R is a summation of 2 tokens per day. And then we have a no payback for missed days. So if you don't log in, you don't claim, you just lose the claim, and that's it. So we have a little graph here, just showing how this basically would work. And under the hood, for our Solidity example, these are just like very minor functions. The access to the smart contract will be, a part of the course as well. So make sure that you are, signing up and getting yourself ready for the that part. So we have a mapping for the last claim time, a function for the time to next drip, function for the claiming the drip. And this follows the checks effects interactions pattern. And we have a constant gas on this as well, which is defined as O of 1. So now that thinking about that, let's look at some of the UX best practices. So showing the player, a visual countdown is going to have something that their eye can peek out on, and allow them to know how long they have until they need to get their claim. Daily reset, so resetting the time using there's different ways. In Web3 we're using like Chainlink or some other kind of Oracle. Pick your whatever works best for what you're developing. A fun claim action, feed pet, unlock is seen. In the voxelverse, you are, mining. So there's a certain amount of, wood, stone, and other like resources that you have on your land that you need to get in order to, claim your reward. And as the game progresses and you progress as a player, those reward, quests change as well. And there can be a grace period or bonuses. You have to really kind of define how that works. In traditional like Web2 games, where the economic incentive is not so high for players to do certain things don't really necessarily benefit them, is different than in Web3 games, where it's highly maybe do things that would circumvent the game in some way. So having a really strict time inside of your Web3 games and having them very rigid, like this is it and nothing else, is the best thing that you can do. And that's just the way that blockchains work. So don't think a lot in the sense of dynamicism when you're working in the Web3 games space. because every time you do that, you're adding another attack vector, really. So should you use it in your game? Well, you have to ask yourself a few questions. One is going to be the daily engagement goal. Do you want to have your players logging in every day to your game or your application? Like this is kind of, it is based around game design, but these concepts are for every dApp that you're basically making. Real token utilities. So what does the token do? Why is there a token, right? So inside the voxelverse, you need the voxel token in order to do, pretty much everything else, right? Even, buying and selling of NFTs, the game assets, they all use the voxel token. And for governance, so building utility is a part of like the token engineering. And this is a part of the game where there is a direct relation to the token itself, to the game loop, and also the economic loop. So it's the trifecta, right? Um, Now, are you going to, deploy this on an L2 like scale, beam? There's, tons of other L2 alternative base, um, because in blockchain games you are performing a lot of transactions. Some of these are going to be sponsored by the game development team, or there might be, a DAO allowment where, some of the treasury is used for sponsoring transactions in the game. But you're going to want to make sure that you're doing this on a chain that can perform a lot of transactions at a minimal cost and have really high through output, right? Confirmation times, we're looking like sub 5 seconds, right? To do this, properly. Respect for players' well-being. And one other point I want to make about the L2 part is that you can make some trade-offs depending on how much decentralization you are looking for in your game. So the more decentralized the actions are, is going to be a lot more expensive with the amount of transactions, where if some of these are going to be offloaded to a server that has, a secure wallet and is doing it that way. So take that into account also. And the majority of games that are going to be, designed and developed are going to have, a server with a, private key that is secured and is mitigating and, helping with those transactions. So take that into account. And you want to have respect for players' well-being. I mean, that's paramount. Final thoughts. Gamify discipline, not addiction, right? So you want to gamify the discipline of performing specific actions in your game. You just don't want to make it like, addictive, right? I know that's like a buzzword. It's like, oh, that game is so addictive, but it's not necessarily that these games are addictive. It's just that the gamification of the discipline of the core game mechanic feels addictive because it's good, right? Respect players, design smart, and grow sustainably, or try your best to. I'm still learning this stuff myself, right? So we're all in it together. So let's talk designing a Web3 game. How do you think about the mechanics of use it or lose it? Is it evil? Is it brilliant? Drop some comments down below, and yeah, let's answer some of these questions. You can tag me on X at Elijah Nomad, and let's build better games. And I'll see you guys in the next video.